The huge glass building on Centauri Prime rose high into the purple sky. Inside, aliens from across the galaxy sat at metal tables, drinking strange liquids and talking in low voices. This was the home of the Galactic Mercenary Guild, where the most dangerous fighters in space came to find work. Captain Jake Morrison sat alone in the corner, his human face standing out among the crowd of aliens. Most of them had too many eyes or skin like rocks or tentacles instead of arms. They all kept their distance from him. Jake was used to it by now. He had been the only human mercenary in the guild for 3 years. The main doors opened with a soft hiss. Commander Vextal walked in, his tall blue body moving with military precision. The hegemony officer had 4 arms and a face that looked like it was carved from stone. Behind him walked 2 guards wearing black armor. The noise in the room died down. Everyone knew who Vextal was. The hegemony was the most powerful military force in this part of the galaxy. When they came to the guild, it meant big money. Vextal walked to the center of the room and pulled out a small device. A blue screen appeared in the air above it, showing star maps and numbers. Jake leaned forward to get a better look. "I have a contract," Vextal said. His voice was deep and cold. "We need a human colony removed from the planet New Haven. The job pays 50 million credits." Jake nearly choked on his drink. 50 million credits was enough money to buy a small moon. Around the room, aliens sat up straighter. Their eyes got wider. Some started whispering to each other. But something strange happened. One by one, the mercenary captains started shaking their heads. Captain Thexmore of the Void Reapers was the first to speak. The Void Reapers were known across the galaxy for their brutal attacks. They had never lost a battle. "We must decline this offer," Thexmore said, his insect-like head tilting to one side. "What?" Vextal's 4 eyes narrowed. "The pay is more than fair." "The pay is not the issue," Thexmore replied. He stood up, his 6 legs clicking on the metal floor. "We do not fight humans on their chosen ground." Captain Zelda of the Crimson Fleet nodded. The Crimson Fleet was famous for destroying entire space stations without losing a single ship. "We suddenly remember we have other jobs to do," she said, her red skin getting darker. Even the Synthesis Collective, who were more machine than living beings, turned down the job. "Our combat programs show too many unknown variables," their speaker unit announced in a flat electronic voice. Vextal looked around the room in shock. These were the most feared fighters in the galaxy. They had destroyed planets and wiped out entire species. Yet they were all saying no to a simple colony removal job. "It is just one small human settlement," Vextal said, his voice getting louder. "They have no military ships, no heavy weapons. They are farmers and workers." A soft laugh came from near the bar. Lisa Carter walked over, her human face smiling. She was an information broker who sold secrets to anyone with enough credits. "You don't get it, do you?" she said to Vextal. "Get what?" the commander asked. "They're not afraid of the colony," Lisa said. "They're afraid of what happens when you corner humans." Jake stood up and walked toward the group. The aliens moved away from him as he passed. He stopped in front of Vextal and looked up at the tall commander. "I'll take the job," Jake said. Vextal smiled, showing sharp blue teeth. "Excellent. When can you leave?" "Right now. But I'm not working for you." Jake reached out and took the datapad from Vextal's hands. "I'm going to warn them." The room went completely silent. Vextal's 4 arms tensed up. "That would be very unwise, human." Jake looked around the room at all the alien mercenaries. They were all watching him, waiting to see what would happen. He had fought beside some of them. He had fought against others. But right now they all looked at him the same way. They looked scared. "You want to know why none of them will take your job?" Jake asked Vextal. "Because they've heard the stories. They know what humans do when you threaten their families." "Stories," Vextal said with a snort. "Humans are weak. Your world is small and unimportant." Lisa Carter laughed again. "Small and unimportant? Your people call Earth a death world. Do you know why?" Vextal didn't answer, but his stone face showed confusion. "Because everything on that planet is trying to kill everything else," Lisa continued. "The weather can freeze you solid or boil you alive. The animals hunt in packs and have teeth like knives. The plants can poison you just by touching them. And humans not only survived there, they became the top hunters. Jake picked up his coat from the chair. The humans on New Haven chose to live on a planet that's even worse than Earth. They're not there by accident. They went there on purpose. He started walking toward the door. Good luck with your war, Commander. You're going to need it. As Jake reached the exit, he heard Captain Thexmore's voice behind him. Human, the insect captain called out. If you survive what's coming, come back and tell us the story. Jake stopped and looked back. If I survive, you won't want to hear. The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. In the guild hall, the aliens sat in uncomfortable silence. Commander Vextal stood alone in the center of the room, holding a contract that no one wanted to complete. Outside, Jake climbed into his small ship. As he started the engines, he thought about the colonists on New Haven. They probably knew the hegemony was coming. Humans always seemed to know when trouble was heading their way. He just hoped he could reach them in time to help them get ready. Because ready or not, the hegemony was coming. And when they arrived, they were going to learn why the galaxy's most dangerous mercenaries were afraid to fight Deathworlders. Jake's ship dropped out of hyperspace near New Haven. The planet hung in front of him like a green and brown ball covered in swirling white clouds. From space, it looked almost peaceful. But Jake knew better. His ship's sensors were already screaming warnings at him. The gravity was 3 times stronger than Earth normal. The air was full of poisonous gases that would kill most aliens in minutes. The temperature swung from burning hot during the day to freezing cold at night. Even the rain was acidic enough to eat through metal. Jake put on his environmental suit and checked the seals twice. One small leak and he would be dead before he hit the ground. As his ship entered the atmosphere, it shook and bucked like a wild animal. Lightning struck the hull 3 times during the descent. Through the cockpit window, Jake could see the landscape below. Massive creatures moved through forests of black trees. Rivers of red water cut through valleys where nothing should be able to live. In the distance, volcanoes shot fire into the purple sky. This was the kind of world that the Galactic Council marked as uninhabitable, the kind of place where survey teams died just trying to land. And somewhere down there, humans had built a home. Jake found the colony's landing pad just as his fuel ran low. The concrete platform was surrounded by tall metal walls covered in sharp spikes. Guard towers stood at each corner, their weapons tracking his ship as he landed. Before he could even turn off his engines, armed figures in heavy armor surrounded his ship. The colony's main gate opened and a woman walked out. She was tall and strong, with gray hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her clothes were simple work gear, but she carried herself like a soldier. Behind her came a group of colonists, all of them armed and ready for trouble. Jake opened his ship's door and stepped out. The gravity hit him like a hammer, making his knees buckle. The air tasted like metal and smoke even through his suit's filters. "I'm looking for the colony leader," he called out. "You found her," the woman said. "I'm Mayor Beth Williams. Who are you and what do you want?" "My name is Jake Morrison. I'm here to warn you the hegemony is coming." Beth's face didn't change, but the colonists behind her started talking in low voices. She raised her hand and they went quiet. "How long do we have?" 3 days, maybe 4 if we're lucky. Beth nodded like she had expected this news. "Roy, get Captain Parker. Tell him to start Phase 3 preparations." A dark-skinned man with scars on his face ran toward the colony buildings. "You don't seem surprised," Jake said. "We've been watching their ships on long-range sensors for a week," Beth replied. "We knew this day would come eventually." She turned and started walking toward the colony. "Come on. Let's get you inside before something tries to eat you." Jake followed her through the gate and into New Haven. What he saw made him stop and stare. This wasn't the rough frontier settlement he had expected. The buildings were solid and well built, with thick walls and small windows. Gardens grew between the houses, but even the plants looked dangerous. Everything had thorns or poisonous leaves. Children played in the streets, but their games involved dodging between training obstacles and practicing with wooden weapons. Their playground equipment was built like a military training course. Even the youngest kids moved with the careful awareness of people who lived in constant danger. Impressive, isn't it? Said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see a woman in a white coat. She was young, with short brown hair and intelligent eyes. I'm Dr. Amy Johnson. I study the local wildlife. How do you keep the kids safe with all these dangerous animals around? Jake asked. Amy smiled. We don't keep them safe from the animals. We teach them to be more dangerous than the animals. They walked past a school where children were learning to identify different types of local creatures by their tracks and sounds. The teacher was showing them which ones they could outrun, which ones they should hide from, and which ones they could fight if they had to. These people are crazy, Jake thought to himself. But as they walked deeper into the colony, he started to understand. The humans hadn't just survived on this death world, they had adapted to it. The colonists wore clothes made from local animal skins that were stronger than military armor. Their tools were made from materials that could cut through almost anything. Their food came from plants and animals that would kill anyone else who tried to eat them. They reached the colony's command center where Captain Steve Parker was studying maps on a large table. He was a big man with gray hair and hands covered in old scars. Around the table stood other colonists, all of them talking about defensive positions and supply lines. Jake Morrison, Steve said without looking up. I remember you from the war. Good to see you again. You know him? Beth asked. We served together in the Titan campaign, Steve replied. Jake here saved my unit when we got pinned down by enemy fire. He finally looked up and smiled. Though I hear you're a mercenary now. I am, but I'm not here for the hegemony. I'm here to help. Steve nodded and pointed at the map. Then take a look at this. We've been preparing for an attack since the day we landed here. Jake looked at the map and felt his blood run cold. The entire colony was built like a fortress. Every building was a potential bunker. Every street was a kill zone. The colonists had turned their whole world into a weapon. The hegemony thinks they're attacking farmers, Steve said. They're wrong. Half our colonists are former military. The other half are people tough enough to survive on a planet that tries to kill them every day. We've got underground tunnels connecting every building, added Beth. Emergency supplies buried in 50 different locations, and we know this planet better than anyone. Dr. Johnson pulled out a data pad showing pictures of local animals. We've also been studying the wildlife. Did you know that the local pack hunters can be trained to attack specific scent markers? Or that the burrowing worms will follow vibration patterns? Jake stared at the pictures of creatures with teeth like swords and claws like spears. You're planning to use the wildlife as weapons? We're planning to use everything, Steve said. This planet has been trying to kill us for 5 years. Now we're going to let it kill someone else. Outside, a siren began to wail. Everyone in the command center looked up. Long-range sensors, Beth said. They're here. Through the building's thick windows, Jake could see the colonists moving with practiced efficiency. Children disappeared into underground shelters. Adults took up positions behind walls and barriers. Weapons appeared as if by magic. In orbit, above New Haven, the hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Vextal stood on his ship's bridge, looking down at the green and brown planet below. Send the surrender demand, he ordered. A few minutes later, Beth Williams's voice came over the communication system. Her words were simple and clear. Come and take it. Vextal smiled his sharp blue smile. Begin orbital bombardment. Show these humans what happens when they defy the hegemony. But down on the planet's surface, the humans were ready. They had been ready for years. The first wave of hegemony bombs fell from the sky like burning stars. They hit the colony's buildings with massive explosions that shook the ground for miles. Smoke and fire rose into the purple sky. From his ship in orbit, Commander Vextal watched the destruction with satisfaction. That should teach them, he said to his officers. Send down the first landing force. But underneath New Haven, the humans were very much alive. The underground tunnels that Beth had mentioned were deeper and stronger than they looked. The colonists sat in their bunkers, waiting for the bombing to stop. Children played quiet games, while adults checked their weapons. Jake crouched next to Steve Parker in the main command bunker. The walls shook with each explosion above them, but the thick concrete held firm. How long can we stay down here? Jake asked. As long as we need to, Steve replied. He was watching screens that showed the surface through hidden cameras. We built this place to survive anything. The real fight hasn't started yet. 3 hours later, the bombing stopped. On the surface, the colony looked destroyed. Buildings were knocked down. Roads were cracked and broken. Fires burned everywhere. It looked like nobody could have survived. The first hegemony transport ships landed near what used to be the colony center. Soldiers in blue armor poured out, their weapons ready. They expected to find dead humans and ruined buildings. Instead, they found something much worse. Colonel Dan Foster watched them through a hidden camera from his bunker 2 miles away. Dan was a thin man with cold gray eyes who had fought in more wars than most people could count. He had been waiting for this moment for 5 years. All units, this is Control. He spoke into his radio. The guests have arrived. Begin Phase 1. Kelly. Brooks lay flat on her belly in a pile of rubble that used to be the school. She had been a Special Forces soldier on Earth before coming to New Haven. Now she was about to show the hegemony why Earth soldiers were feared across the galaxy. The hegemony troops moved in neat lines through the destroyed streets. They talked to each other in their own language, probably joking about how easy this job was going to be. Kelly smiled and pressed a button on her remote control. The ground underneath the alien soldiers exploded upward, but it wasn't bombs that came out of the Earth. It was the local wildlife. Razor tusk boars burst from hidden tunnels, their metal-hard tusks gleaming in the sunlight. These creatures normally hunted alone, but the humans had spent months training them to follow scent trails. The scent trails led straight to the hegemony soldiers. The aliens screamed as the boars attacked. Their energy weapons could kill the animals, but not before the creatures tore through their ranks. Blue blood splattered across the broken concrete as the boars did what they did best. Phase 1 complete, Kelly reported into her radio. Moving to Phase 2 position. But the boars were just the beginning. Mike Sullivan sat in his workshop deep underground, his hands dancing over control panels. Before coming to New Haven, Mike had been an engineer who built bridges and buildings. Now he was about to use his skills in a very different way. The colony's power plant was built over a network of underground hot springs. Mike had spent years modifying the system, turning it into something that no sane engineer would ever build. He watched the hegemony soldiers on his cameras and pressed a series of buttons. Geysers of superheated steam erupted from the ground all around the landing zone. The steam was hot enough to cook meat in seconds. The hegemony soldiers tried to run, but the steam followed them through hidden pipes that Mike had built under every street. The aliens' blue skin turned red, and then black as the steam hit them. Their armor protected them from energy weapons, but it couldn't stop heat this intense. More soldiers fell, screaming in languages that the humans didn't understand but didn't need to. Phase 2 complete, Mike reported. The steam system is working perfectly. Dr. Amy Johnson watched from her own hidden position as the surviving hegemony soldiers tried to regroup. Amy had studied every living thing on New Haven for 5 years. She knew which creatures were territorial, which ones were hungry, and which ones could be convinced to attack specific targets. She opened several containers that she had placed around the landing zone days ago. Inside were small flying insects that the humans called buzzerflies. To most creatures, the flies were just annoying, but to the hegemony soldiers, they were deadly. The flies were attracted to the specific chemicals in hegemony breathing equipment. They would fly into the aliens' air filters and die there, blocking the flow of clean air. Within minutes, the soldiers would start breathing the planet's poisonous atmosphere. Amy watched through her binoculars as the hegemony troops began clawing at their helmets, trying to get more air. Some of them pulled their helmets off completely, which killed them even faster. The lucky ones fell unconscious. The unlucky ones died choking on air that burned their lungs like acid. Phase 3 complete, Amy said into her radio. The bugs are doing their job. Up in orbit, Commander Vextal watched his soldiers die on his screens. What he was seeing made no sense. These weren't military tactics. No civilized species fought this way. They were using the planet itself as a weapon. Send down the second wave, he ordered, but his voice wasn't as confident as before. Sir, one of his officers said carefully. Maybe we should try a different approach. No! Vextal slammed his fist on the control panel. They are just humans. We will not be defeated by farmers and workers. But down on the surface, Jake Morrison was learning that these weren't just farmers and workers. As night fell over New Haven, he followed Steve Parker through a tunnel that led to the edge of the landing zone. The real fun starts now, Steve whispered. Daytime was just the warm-up. These aliens can barely see in the dark, and they're afraid of everything that moves. Kelly Brooks and 5 other humans emerged from hidden positions around the hegemony camp. They moved like shadows, their faces painted with mud, and their clothes covered in local plant fibers that masked their scent. Each of them carried weapons, made from materials found on New Haven. The hegemony soldiers had set up lights around their camp, but the lights only made the darkness beyond seem deeper and more frightening. Strange sounds came from the forest, howls and clicks and scraping, noises that the aliens had never heard before. Kelly and her team didn't attack the soldiers directly. Instead, they cut power lines and sabotaged equipment. They moved supplies around so the aliens couldn't find anything. They made noises in the dark that sounded like the planet's most dangerous predators. By morning, the second wave of hegemony soldiers was exhausted and terrified. They jumped at every shadow and shot at every moving branch. Half of them were too scared to leave their landing ships. Commander Vextal stared at his reports in disbelief. He had lost over 2,000 soldiers, and the humans hadn't even shown themselves for a real fight. His troops were being destroyed by creatures, by steam, by tiny insects, and by fear. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we're receiving a message from the surface. Put it through, Vextal ordered. Beth Williams's voice filled the bridge, calm and steady. Commander, this is your only warning. Leave now, or we'll show you what humans do when we stop playing games. Vextal's 4 hands shook with rage. Playing games? You call this playing games? Commander, Beth replied. We haven't even started fighting yet. News of the battle at New Haven spread across the galaxy faster than light speed. In the bars and meeting places where information was bought and sold, beings from 100 different worlds whispered about what was happening on the human colony. On Centauri Prime, the Galactic Mercenary Guild had become unusually quiet. The usual noise of deal-making and bragging had stopped. Instead, aliens sat in small groups, listening to intercepted military communications from the hegemony fleet. Captain, Thexmore of the Void Reapers sat at his usual table, his insect-like head bent over a data pad. The reports coming from New Haven were unlike anything he had seen in 30 years of warfare. They are using the planet's weather as artillery, he said to the other mercenary captains gathered around him. That's impossible, said Captain Zelda, of the Crimson Fleet. But her red skin had turned pale as she read the same reports. Lisa Carter walked over to their table, carrying a drink and wearing a grim smile. Still think humans are weak? She asked. These reports cannot be accurate, said the Synthesis Collective speaker unit. No biological species fights with such creativity. Lisa pulled up a chair and sat down. Let me tell you about human history, she said. On Earth, humans fought wars in places where nothing should be able to live. They fought battles in snow so deep it could bury buildings. They fought in deserts where the heat could kill you in minutes. They fought in jungles where every plant and animal was trying to eat them. The aliens around the table listened in uncomfortable silence. And do you know what they learned from all that fighting? Lisa continued. They learned that if you can't change your environment, you make your environment work for you. If you can't beat your enemy with strength, you beat them with fear. If you can't win a fair fight, you make sure the fight isn't fair. Captain Ray Nelson of the Terran Diplomatic Corps entered the guild hall just as Lisa finished speaking. Behind him walked Corporal Jane Davis, whose mechanical arm gleamed under the lights. The 2 humans moved with the same calm confidence that Jake Morrison had shown days earlier. The alien mercenaries watched them nervously. Word had already spread about what humans could do when they were angry. I have a message for anyone who wants to listen, Ray said in a clear, strong voice. The Terran government has one simple request. Leave human colonies alone. Is that a threat? Asked Captain Thexmore. Jane stepped forward, and the aliens could see the scars on her face and arms. "It's friendly advice," she said. "The colonists on New Haven are farmers and families. You don't want to meet our actual soldiers." "What do you mean?" Zelda asked. Ray pulled up a holographic display showing a star map. New Haven is a farming colony with 5,000 civilians. Earth has a population of 12 billion people. Our military has 300 million active soldiers and another billion in reserves. The room went completely silent. "The colonists on New Haven are using farming tools and homemade weapons," Jane added. "Our military has weapons that can crack planets in half." On the display, Ray showed images of massive human warships and space fortresses. "But here's the thing about humans," he said. "We don't need our military to be dangerous. Give us any environment, and we'll find a way to survive in it. Give us any enemy, and we'll find a way to defeat them." Captain Paul Wright, another human, mercenary, stood up from a corner table where he had been sitting quietly. "I was at the Battle of Kepler Station," he said. "I watched human engineers turn a broken space dock into a weapons platform using nothing but spare parts and industrial tools. It took them 6 hours." The aliens looked at each other nervously. The Battle of Kepler Station was famous throughout the galaxy. A small human task force had held off an entire alien invasion fleet using tactics that military schools still couldn't explain. "I was at the siege of Alpha Centauri," Paul continued. "The humans were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. They were trapped on a moon with no atmosphere and no resources. Know what they did? They built weapons out of moon rocks and mining equipment. They turned the entire moon into a giant railgun. Back at New Haven, Commander Vextal was receiving his own reports from across the galaxy. His communications officer approached his chair carefully, holding a datapad like it might explode. "Sir, we're getting messages from Hegemony High Command," the officer said. "They want to know why we haven't completed the mission yet." Vextal looked at the screens showing his decimated forces on the planet below. In 3 days of fighting, he had lost half his army to tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. His soldiers were more afraid of the planet than they were of enemy weapons. "What should I tell them, sir?" the officer asked. Before Vextal could answer, another officer ran onto the bridge. "Commander, long-range sensors are detecting ships approaching the system." "Reinforcements from High Command?" Vextal asked hopefully. "No, sir. They're human ships. 3 vessels. But they're not military. The lead ship is broadcasting diplomatic codes. On the bridge's main screen, a new ship appeared. It was smaller than the hegemony vessels but looked incredibly advanced. Its hull was covered in weapons that the aliens didn't recognize. "This is Captain Luke Adams of the Terran Navy," came a calm voice over the communication system. "We're here to discuss the situation." "There is nothing to discuss," Vextal replied angrily. "This is a hegemony military operation." "Actually, there's quite a bit to discuss," Luke said. "For example, why are you attacking a peaceful farming colony? And why are your soldiers dying from insect bites and steam burns?" Vextal's face turned darker blue. "Your colonists are using uncivilized tactics." Luke's voice stayed calm and friendly. "Commander, let me explain something about humans. What you call uncivilized tactics we call Tuesday. Those colonists down there are holding back because they have children to protect. If you force them to really fight, you won't like what happens." "Next." "Are you threatening me?" Vextal demanded. "I'm offering you a way out," Luke replied. "Leave now and we'll forget this happened. Keep fighting and I'll have to call for backup." "Backup? You have 3 small ships." Luke's voice took on a different tone, still calm, but somehow much more frightening. "Commander, those 3 small ships each carry enough firepower to level a continent, and if I call for backup, Earth will send a fleet that can turn this entire star system into space dust." On New Haven's surface, Jake Morrison sat in the command bunker with Beth Williams and Steve Parker. They were listening to the conversation. "Between the 2 ship commanders? Think he'll back down?" Jake asked. Beth shook her head. "Pride is a dangerous thing. He's lost too many soldiers to retreat now." Steve was studying tactical displays that showed hegemony troop movements. "Doesn't matter. If he wants to keep fighting, we'll keep killing his soldiers. We've got plenty. More surprises ready." Dr. Amy Johnson walked into the bunker carrying a cage full of small, colorful creatures that looked like flying snakes. "The sleep wasps are ready," she announced. "One sting puts most aliens into a coma for 3 days." Mike Sullivan looked up from his engineering station. "And I've finished modifying the underground river system. I can flood any part of the colony with boiling mud on 10 seconds' notice." Jake stared at them in amazement. These people had turned an entire planet into a weapon, and they were just getting started. He was beginning to understand why the galaxy's most dangerous mercenaries had refused to fight humans. On his ship in orbit, Commander Vextal made his decision. "All ships prepare for maximum orbital bombardment. If we cannot take this colony, we will destroy it completely." Luke Adams' voice came over the communication system one last time. "Commander, that would be a very bad idea." "Why?" Vextal demanded. "Because," Luke said quietly, "you would be declaring war on the human race. And humans don't forgive, we don't forget, and we never, ever give up." Commander Vextal stood on his bridge, staring at the planet below. His 4 hands were clenched into fists. In 3 days of fighting, he had lost more soldiers than in his last 10 military campaigns combined. The humans had made him look like a fool in front of the entire galaxy. "Charge all weapons," he ordered his crew. "If we cannot take this colony, we will destroy it from orbit." His weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, there are still civilians down there. Children. They chose to defy the hegemony." Vextal replied coldly. "Fire all weapons." The massive guns on the hegemony ships began to glow with deadly energy. In seconds, they would unleash enough power to burn the entire surface of New Haven. Nothing could survive what was coming. But Captain Luke Adams had been waiting for this moment. "All human ships, execute defense pattern Alpha," Luke said calmly into his communicator. The 3 human vessels moved with impossible speed and precision. They placed themselves between the hegemony fleet and the planet just as the alien weapons fired. Energy beams that could destroy cities hit the human ship's shields and disappeared like raindrops hitting a window. "Impossible," Vextal whispered. "No shields are that strong." "Commander," Luke's voice came over the communication system. "I tried to warn you. Human technology has advanced quite a bit since you last bothered to check." On the planet's surface, the colonists watched the light show in the sky with calm interest. Beth Williams stood outside the main bunker, her arms crossed. "About time," she said. Jake Morrison came up beside her. "You knew this would happen?" "Of course," Beth replied. "Did you think Earth would just let one of its colonies get destroyed? We've been in contact with them since day 1. Steve Parker joined them, carrying a cup of coffee made from local plants that would poison most aliens. "The hegemony made a big mistake," he said. "They thought we were alone out here. In space, Luke Adams was just getting started. Commander Vextal, you have 10 seconds to surrender before I show you what human weapons can really do." "I will not surrender to inferior beings," Vextal shouted. "Wrong answer," Luke said quietly. The lead human ship fired a single weapon. It wasn't an energy beam or a missile. It was something new, something that the galaxy had never seen before. The weapon hit the largest hegemony ship and seemed to do nothing at first. Then the alien ship began to fall apart, not exploding, not burning, just coming apart piece by piece as if someone was taking it apart with invisible tools. In 30 seconds, a ship the size of a city had been reduced to harmless scrap metal. "Molecular disruptor," Luke explained casually. "We invented it last year. Very clean, very precise. Would you like to see it again?" The remaining hegemony ships tried to run, but the human vessels were faster. They surrounded the alien fleet like wolves surrounding sheep. More ships began to fall apart under the invisible weapons. "Stop!" Vextal finally screamed. "We surrender." "Too late for that," Luke replied. "You threatened children. You attacked a peaceful colony. You declared war on humanity." His voice grew colder. "But I'm not going to destroy you. That would be too easy." Instead, something else happened. Every communication system on every hegemony ship activated at once. Screens lit up throughout the fleet, showing the faces of human children from New Haven. The children were smiling and waving, completely unafraid. Hello, alien soldiers, said a little girl with pigtails. My name is Emma, and I'm 7 years old. I wanted to thank you for helping us show the galaxy how tough humans can be. Other children appeared on the screens. We're not scared of you, said a boy who couldn't have been older than 10. Our parents taught us how to be brave. We know you were just following orders, added another child, but you should probably find a different job. Commander Vextal stared at the screens in horror. These children should have been terrified. Their world had been under attack for days. Yet they looked completely calm and confident. You see, Commander, Luke Adams said, that's the difference between humans and everyone else. Our children don't fear death because they know their parents will always protect them. And their parents don't fear death because they know they're protecting their children. On New Haven, the colonists were already rebuilding. The hegemony bombing had destroyed some buildings, but the humans treated it like a minor inconvenience. They had survived 5 years on a planet that tried to kill them every day. A few broken buildings were nothing. Dr. Amy Johnson was back to studying the local wildlife, taking notes on how the animals had reacted during the battle. Fascinating, she muttered to herself. The razor boars seemed to have developed a taste for alien blood. Mike Sullivan was designing new improvements to the colony's defenses. Next time someone attacks us, I want to be ready with something really special, he told his engineering team. Back on Centauri Prime, the Galactic Mercenary Guild had become a very different place. The alien mercenaries sat in stunned silence, reading reports from the battle. The humans had won without even using their real military. 50 million credits, Captain Thexmore said quietly. 50 million credits, and not one of us was brave enough to take the job. Brave enough? Lisa Carter laughed. You mean stupid enough. Those weren't soldiers on New Haven, they were farmers. Imagine what would have happened if the hegemony had attacked an actual human military base. Captain Zelda nodded slowly. We need to send a message to all mercenary companies in the galaxy. No contracts involving human colonies, ever. The Synthesis Collective Speaker Unit agreed. New combat protocol accepted. Humans classified as extreme threat. Recommend complete avoidance. Jake Morrison walked into the guild hall just as they were having this conversation. The alien mercenaries fell silent and stared at him. He looked exactly the same as when he had left days earlier, but something was different. There was a new confidence in his walk, a new look in his eyes. How did it go? Lisa asked. Jake sat down at his usual table. The hegemony surrendered. The colony is safe. And I learned something important. What's that? Jake smiled. I learned that I'm not just a human who became a mercenary. I'm a mercenary who happens to be human. There's a big difference. Across the galaxy, word spread about what had happened at New Haven. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. A small human farming colony had defeated an entire hegemony fleet, using nothing but their wits, their planet, and their refusal to give up. The hegemony quietly abandoned all plans to expand into human space. Other alien governments began to reconsider their policies toward humanity. Trade agreements were signed, diplomatic channels were opened. Peace treaties were negotiated, but everyone remembered the same lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. On New Haven, life returned to normal. Children played in the rebuilt streets. Farmers tended their dangerous crops. Engineers improved their deadly machines. And everyone kept their weapons close just in case. Because they had learned something too. They had learned that the galaxy was watching them now. Some beings watched with respect. Others watched with fear. But all of them watched with the knowledge that humans were different. Mayor Beth Williams stood on the colony's wall, looking out at the alien landscape that she now called home. The purple sky was beautiful in its own harsh way. The dangerous animals were just part of life. The poisonous plants had become useful resources. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy, she said to herself. We're not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced, but we're the ones who turned a death world into a home, and that makes us something special. Far away, in the Yao, dark spaces between stars, Other human colonies were growing and thriving on worlds that no other species could survive. They were all learning the same lesson that New Haven had learned. When you make your home in hell, everything else becomes easy. And when someone threatens your home, you show them why even the galaxy's top mercenaries won't fight Deathworlders.